My dear friends, we are in the 23rd Sunday of the ordinary time. The gospel is really marvelous because Jesus speaks about costly discipleship. He says, hate your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, and yourself. It's the first condition for being his disciple. Then he says, carry the cross. The second condition for being the disciple. And thirdly, he says, renounce everything. The third condition for being his disciple. So Jesus is literally telling us the cost that we have to give for being his disciple. It means to say, discipleship is indeed a costly affair, not a free thing. He says, hate everybody. Now, how can he say that? Because the fourth command is honor your father and your mother. And the very God who told to love and honor our parents, how can he say, hate your father and your mother, your brother and your sister? He cannot teach against love. Napoleon Bonaparte would say, Charlemagne or Alexander the Great, maybe the great conquerors, even I myself, all of us, we conquered kingdoms with force and with battle. Jesus alone conquered human minds and kingdoms with love. So how can a person who preached so much about love preach hatred? So what is Jesus actually trying to tell us? Jesus is saying, do not give the love that is due to your God to people, whether it is your father or your mother or your brother or your sister. Love them less because God is to be loved more. Now, this is a dilemma for most of us. What do you mean by love less and love more? The priorities of life. What are our priorities when it comes to God, when it comes to faith, when it comes to the practice of our religion? The true priority is actually the exercise of values that were taught to us by our Lord. Can we stick on to the values? Can we stick on to principles and the moral values that were taught to us by Jesus in the Gospels? Then I can say that we are fit to be his disciples. But once we value relations more than the values itself, then naturally we are straying away from the gospel and then we cannot be his disciple. So the first thing I would say is love less. That is why John of the Cross, in his precautions, he would say, no, the honor that is due to your God should not be split among people, whether they are your friends, your closest relative, even blood relations. No, it shall not be split. It shall be due to God alone. So have the priority set clearly in your mind. Well, this also can mean something else from the historical and geographical context of the Jewish people. Because when you read the book of Amos, he speaks about social justice. Because there was a sense of self-sufficiency amidst the Jewish people, because of which, they really never wanted to get into the lives of the poor people. They always kept them at bay. They didn't want to interfere with them, mingle with them. They were always marginalized and pushed to the corners. And Jesus is saying, do not push them to the corners. Because if your self-sufficiency, you have reclused to yourself. No, you come out of yourself. Stop loving yourself. Stop being within your own private circle. Come out. So that is also a meaning of hating everybody or hating your own self. Because once you are stuck with yourself, you just see your own self projected. You cannot see God's people. So Jesus is clearly advocating against that. So he's not going against his own self when he says hate everybody, but he is just putting it in another way, maybe in a super hyperbole, when he says, hate. Secondly, Jesus says, carry the cross. Now, cross is the utmost symbol of love. I heard once a preacher preaching. The devil, when he got Judas to betray Jesus, he betrayed him with a kiss. And the devil had a moment of fun with Jesus, probably saying to him, look how I decided to hurt you. I used a symbol of love to hurt love itself. I am victorious over you. But Jesus says, you think kiss is a symbol of love? Well, I have a greater symbol of love. That is the cross. He took the cross and he defeated Satan. So if you want to be a disciple of Jesus, be ready to carry your cross. Do not run away from crosses. Because in the cross, you manifest how much love you have for your God, you have for your neighbor. And thirdly, Jesus says, renounce everything. Well, my dear brothers and sisters, this is really a very difficult thing. Jesus teaches us the lesson of renunciation through the two metaphors he uses in the gospel. Firstly, Jesus teaches us the lesson of renunciation through the two parables he uses in the gospel passage. The first parable is about a person who wants to build a watchtower. Now, he makes sure that he has sufficient fund in order to build this tower, lest he becomes an object of mockery in front of the people. And secondly, Jesus also teaches us through the example of a king who wants to wage war. He makes sure that he has sufficient number of personnel or army people to wage this battle for him. So finally, renunciation is all about having a true knowledge of your strength and your weaknesses. Because God should be your strength. God should be the rock on which you build everything, not your own personal abilities. Finally, when it comes to renunciation, you have to make yourself completely influenced upon God. And that is exactly what Jesus is trying to tell to each one of us. Renounce. Renounce. Get rid of everything that you think you are. Because we are all nothing compared to the might that is God. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, today, as we reflect on this gospel passage, Jesus is giving us a great deal of challenge. The challenge is to hate, to carry the cross, and to renounce everything. You know, there is a theological preposition and a teaching made by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He says there are two types of grace. One is a cheap grace, another is a costly grace. The cheap grace is you don't have to do anything because you feel that God has done everything for you. Through the sacraments, baptism, or maybe through the sacraments that you are celebrating every day in your life, you receive sufficient grace. Of course, all you have to do is just receive the grace because God has done everything for you. He died on the cross for you. He initiated the sacraments for you. All you have to do is just be the passive recipient of all the gifts your God has given you. That's a cheap grace because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to sweat. But there is a costly grace for which you have to work hard together with your God. And that is the true sense of Christian discipleship. Because so much as your God died for you, you must also make sure that you cooperate with the grace that He provides to you in order to multiply it and in order to reap the fruits that come out of this grace. For my dear brothers and sisters, be the people who are willing to travel through the narrow road, the costly grace, because that is the way of the gospel, and that is what our Lord has taught us. Discipleship is a costly affair. Are you ready to take up the cost? God bless you.